Hello, class. I wanted to walk you through how to set up exercise 2 for this week. And for this exercise, you will just need your soft charcoal and an eraser. And it doesn't really matter what kind of a light situation you have for this drawing because you will just be drawing the silhouette, just an outline of some simple objects. Oops. And so it doesn't really matter how you light them because you're never going to shade it. So this exercise I call the contour line skyline exercise. And for it, you're going to need to assemble 4 or 5 very simple objects. Try to just have wine bottles and glasses. I just have simple tubes and really simple forms, because the point of this is not to deal with something very detailed and complicated. The point is to be measuring, and that is what you'll be doing for this exercise. So I want you to arrange your 4 to 5 objects at different heights. And I want you to look at what's called the negative space, which is the air around the objects, the shape that air around the objects would make. And just make sure that you're setting up some distinct moments so that way the objects aren't in front of each other, because you're just doing the whole silhouette. And so once you have your objects set up, and I just want to remind you that the camera is facing a slightly different angle than I'm looking at with this. So the drawing that I do is going to be a little different than what you're seeing. The first thing you want to do is start with one object. And what you don't want to ever do is have to work with a cropped object if you are measuring. And so what I'm going to do is let's just start with the egg thing. So what you're going to do is make a good judgment call for what orientation your paper should be for your setup. So my setup is taller than it is wide. So I've got my sheet of newsprint vertical on my drawing board. And so the first thing I'm going to do is eyeball the outline of the egg thing, and I'm going to place it. I know that the tube is the highest, and so I'm just going to leave a mark for where I want the top of the tube to be. And then I'm just going to eyeball the negative space to help me place the egg. You guys should all start thinking about placing your subject matter on the page. It's really important to take some time to think about where it's best to put your objects, and also where you might scale it, how you might scale it as well. You should consider, because if I go too large, I'll end up cropping. I really am going to focus on the top of my objects for this. So I use the tube to help me place the egg form, and then the egg form helps me place the lava lamp. And you want to just press really lightly for this part of the drawing, because all of these lines will change. In this exercise, you'll measure off different parts of the drawing against itself. And so then here I'm looking to place this dome, and I'm checking against where I see the negative space in between the egg and the poster tube. So it's much lower. So I'm just kind of eyeballing, and from my vantage point, it crops out just a little bit, and then it's sitting on a little container you guys can't see. So this is a good kind of rough first pass through. And what you want to then do, once you just really roughly get the silhouette in of what you're seeing, and the silhouette is sort of the outline of your subject, then you need to start measuring. And so what I'm going to do, even though it's a silhouette, if your objects are overlapping, it's okay to draw where they end. So here my egg thing is sitting on a vitamin bottle. I'm just going to draw the outline of those forms too, just because it'll help with measuring to see the bottom and top of where this egg form is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the height to the width of my egg form. And my egg form is being cropped by the tube. So I'm going to measure the height of the egg to where it is in my visual field. So I'm not going to imagine where the end is. I'm going to actually measure it against what I can see of it, because it's a little cropped in my view. And so remember, when you're measuring, you need to outstretch your elbow and lock it. And then you need to close one eye and imagine that you're pinching the top and bottom of your form. Or you can also hold your drawing utensil if it's long enough. Mine is not long enough to measure this. And so then I'll use my finger measurement. So once I lock my elbow, close one eye, and pretend to pinch the height of my egg from this vantage point, then I'm going to keep the distance between my fingers the same and just turn my hand so that way I can eyeball how much shorter or longer is the width of my egg form at its widest against the height. And it looks like it's about 5/6, I would say, of the height. So it's narrower than it is tall. So then with that, I can actually try to put my finger here and check it. So it's actually pretty close to what I noticed. And one thing to understand is when you are making a measurement and you need to make a change, you always have two options of what you can change. I can either change the height of this once I've checked my measurement, or I can change the width. So I decided to make it a little bit taller, and that creates the right dimension. And again, try not to just draw the same lines over and over. It was a really minor adjustment I made, but I always notice my drawing students kind of redrawing the same lines over and over. So try to make meaningful changes. My drawing utensil literally never touches down unless I'm observing something from my subject that I'm recording and changing in the drawing. I'm always noticing that my students will just be kind of staring at the drawing and just working. And I always wonder what they are, why they're making changes, because I don't see them looking at the still life. So make sure you're not doing that. It's terrible. So now that I'm confident that my egg measurement is close enough, similar, I can check it against the tube. So now I'm going to actually measure the width of my tube with my elbow locked, one eye closed, and visually looking at the distance between my fingers. And I'm going to check it, and it's my egg at its widest is just a little bit wider than my tube, which is surprising to me. And so I'm going to take my egg measurement and just make sure that my tube is just a little bit thinner than that. So I think that my tube can afford to get wider based on that measurement. So then I'm going to erase the old line. And something I notice my students do that I want to caution you against is erasing the mistake line before you draw the new one. Oftentimes when I see students do that, they'll just end up making a very similar mistake again. So draw the correct line and then erase your mistake. So then now that I've got a thickness to the tube that I appreciate, I'm going to measure the negative space of the tube height above the egg. And so I'm going to check that against, the width of my egg, and it's the exact same measurement. So when you're looking for something to measure, I kind of look for something that will help me understand the comparison. So something that seems similar. That's why I checked it against the width, and it is exactly the same measurement. But you can, I could have checked it against, the dome or the height of the tube also. So let me just get that in. So the distance of the height of the tube above the egg is the same as the egg as its widest from my view. So I'm going to take my measurement of the egg at its widest from my drawing and put it up here. So I run into a problem because to get the tube to the correct height, I actually will go off the page, and I don't want to do that. So instead, I'm actually going to shrink the scale of my egg and just bring it down. Look at the angle, trace it in the air. That can help with angles. I'm going to bring the egg down and shrink everything so that it will fit on the page. So then I'm going to bring it in more narrow, and I'm looking at the curvature to help place. And then now the vitamin bottle is here roughly, and the lava lamp is coming out here. So that's what I was saying when I explained that when you measure and you need to change something, you always have a couple options for what changes. And placing on the page is going to become more and more important. So you don't want to commit too much drawing before you know everything's going to fit right. So now I can take the width of the new egg, and it is exactly what it needs to be for the height of the tube. So this is how I would proceed with the drawing to get it more accurate. Probably the next thing I would do is measure the height of this dome against the width of the tube or of the egg. And I call my consistent measuring point, which ended up being the widest point of the egg that I could see, call it an anchor, and just check everything back to the drawing. Because just like dark and light is relative in a drawing, so is an accurate or inaccurate proportion. A wonky drawn nose is only wonky compared to the rest of the face. So just try your best with this. And that is the silhouette skyline exercise, contour line drawing. And you don't need to shade this when you're done. All I want to see here demonstrated is that you've done a lot of measuring to get an accurate silhouette. So I will ask that you upload the drawing of the skyline contour line drawing and also a photo of your setup from the view that you were looking at it. That will help me figure out how effective you were with measuring.